The British monarchy is an institution forged in the fires of 1,000 years, a heavy mantle of tradition that weighs upon those who wear the crown. In the modern era, few figures have navigated its intricate shadows with as much resilience as Camilla, the Queen consort. To understand the woman today, we must look back at the origins of a journey that defied the expectations of the court and the public alike. This is not a fairy tale of light, but a serious exploration of a life lived in the periphery before stepping into the blinding glare of historical destiny. Born Camilla Shand in 1947, she was the daughter of a distinguished officer raised in the rolling hills of Sussex. Her early world was one of landed gentry, stable and steeped in the quiet customs of the English countryside. She was not a product of the high aristocracy, yet she moved with an innate confidence that caught the eye of the elite. This was a time of post-war recovery, where the old guard still held the keys to social standing, and young Camilla was being shaped by the very traditions that would later both embrace and reject her. The year was 1970. Under a leaden sky at a Smith's Lawn polo match in Windsor, a chance encounter changed the course of the monarchy. Camilla Shand was introduced to a young Prince Charles. Legend suggests she approached him with a sharp wit, referencing her great-grandmother's historical liaison with his great-great-grandfather. In that moment of shared laughter and immediate chemistry, a bond was forged that would endure decades of scrutiny. They were two souls who found a rare, private understanding amidst the rigid protocols of their respective lives, unaware of the storm they were igniting. The connection was undeniable. Throughout the early 1970s, Charles and Camilla were inseparable, sharing a love for the outdoors, horses, and a specific brand of British stoicism. However, the corridors of Buckingham Palace were whispering. To the royal establishment, Camilla was seen as a companion, but not a suitable bride for the future king. She lacked the virginal innocence and the high-ranking lineage the advisors demanded for a queen. In the shadows of the palace, the machinery of tradition began to turn, seeking to steer the prince toward a more appropriate matrimonial path. The weight of duty soon intervened. Charles was called away to serve in the Royal Navy, boarding the HMS Norfolk for a long deployment. It was a separation designed to cool the embers of their romance. While the prince was at sea, the reality of her position became clear to Camilla. She was a woman of pragmatism. She knew the palace would never sanction their union. The silence of the ocean between them allowed for the influence of others to grow, as the establishment pushed for a resolution that would preserve the image of the crown at any cost. In Charles's absence, Camilla made a choice that would define the next 30 years. She accepted a proposal from Andrew Parker Bowles, a dashing cavalry officer who had been a recurring figure in her social circle. Their marriage in 1973 was a grand affair, attended by members of the royal family, including Princess Anne. To the public, it seemed like a standard high society union. But to Charles, receiving the news while stationed in the Caribbean, it was a devastating blow. The woman he loved was now bound to another, and the path ahead seemed suddenly fractured. The years that followed were a complex dance of friendship and hidden longing. Camilla settled into life as a mother and a military wife, while Charles struggled with the loneliness of his role. He remained a close friend to the Parker Bowles family, even becoming godfather to their son, Tom. However, the flame of their original connection never truly extinguished. They moved in the same circles, their lives constantly intersecting in the mist-covered landscapes of the English countryside, a private world shielded from the prying eyes of a press that had not yet turned its full attention toward them. By the late 1970s, the pressure on Prince Charles to find a bride reached a breaking point. The monarchy needed an heir, and the public demanded a fairy tale. The search led to the young lady Diana Spencer, a figure who seemed to fit every requirement the palace had previously found lacking in Camilla. Diana was young, aristocratic, and seemingly malleable. As the world prepared for the wedding of the century, a hidden tragedy was already in motion. Charles remained tethered to Camilla in spirit, a ghost haunting the edges of his upcoming, ill-fated union. The 1981 wedding was a spectacle of unmatched scale, but behind the silk and lace, the truth was far more somber. Camilla was present in the congregation at St. Paul's Cathedral, a silent observer to the man she loved pledging himself to another. For the prince, the day was a duty performed under the watchful eye of a global audience. For Camilla, it was the beginning of a period of intense private struggle, as she became the shadow in a marriage that was crumbling almost before it began, caught in the gears of a royal tradition that demanded perfection. As the 1980s progressed, the private reality of the royal marriage began to bleed into the public consciousness. The War of the Waleses was brewing, and at its center, though she tried to remain invisible, was Camilla. She became the focal point for the frustration of a princess and the obsession of a relentless media. This was the era of clandestine phone calls and secret meetings, a period where the ancient mysteries of the monarchy were dragged into the tabloid light. Camilla was about to become the most vilified woman in Britain, a role she never sought but could not escape. By the early 1990s, the veil of royal secrecy had been torn asunder. Camilla Parker Bowles found herself under a relentless siege, her private life transformed into a public spectacle. The press, fueled by the leaked details of a crumbling royal marriage, descended upon her quiet country home. She was no longer just a figure in the background of Prince Charles's life. She was the antagonist in a national drama. Every shutter click was a weapon, every headline a condemnation. Inside the walls of Middlewick House, she lived in a state of perpetual blackout. Windows shuttered against the prying eyes of a world that had already judged her. In 1992, the scandal deepened with the release of the Camillagate tapes, a series of intimate phone recordings that laid bare the depth of her relationship with the Prince of Wales. The transcriptions were printed in every tabloid, stripping away any remaining shreds of privacy. For the British public, the tapes were a shocking transgression of royal protocol and morality. For Camilla, they were a devastating betrayal of intimacy. The voice of a future king, whispering his devotions across a static-filled line, became a haunting refrain that echoed through the halls of the establishment, threatening to dismantle the very institution he was born to lead. While the world outside raged, Camilla retreated into a stoic silence that would become her trademark. She faced a level of vitriol rarely seen in modern history, yet she refused to defend herself or strike back. This period was one of profound internal exile. Friends described her as a woman of immense resilience, navigating the storm with a quiet dignity that baffled her critics. In the corridors of power, the monarchy was reeling, unsure of how to handle the woman who had become the most unpopular figure in the country. She was the eye of the hurricane, motionless while everything around her was torn apart. The tension reached a breaking point in 1995 when Princess Diana sat down for her landmark Panorama interview. The phrase, "There were three of us in this marriage," resonated across the globe, cementing Camilla's image as the third party who had broken a fairy tale. The public's sympathy for the Princess of Wales was matched only by their disdain for the woman Charles could not give up. Camilla watched from the shadows as the monarchy's popularity plummeted. The ancient mysteries of the crown were now being debated in every pub and living room, and she was the focal point of the nation's collective anger. As her own marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles finally dissolved in divorce in 1995, Camilla's path forward seemed more uncertain than ever. The legal finality of her separation was a quiet affair compared to the media circus surrounding the palace, but it marked a significant shift. She was now a woman alone, yet still tethered to the heir to the throne by a bond that neither time nor scandal could break. The divorce was handled with a characteristic lack of drama, reflecting the practical, semi-realistic approach she took to her life, even as the world around her descended into chaos and tabloid frenzy. The formal divorce of Charles and Diana in 1996 changed the landscape of the monarchy once again. For the first time, the possibility of a future for Charles and Camilla began to be whispered in the inner circles of the palace. However, the path was treacherous. The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh remained cautious, wary of any move that might further alienate the public. Camilla remained in the background, a ghost in the prince's life, as they navigated a world that still viewed their love as a betrayal. It was a period of careful navigation through the minefields of tradition and public opinion. In August 1997, the world was shattered by the death of Princess Diana in Paris. The outpouring of global grief was unprecedented, and in the wake of the tragedy, Camilla became a pariah once more. The public's anger was raw and redirected toward the woman they felt had caused the princess so much pain. Camilla retreated into total seclusion, knowing that any public appearance would be seen as an insult to the memory of the people's princess. She became a shadow, existing only in the periphery of a nation in mourning, her future with the prince seemingly erased by the weight of a tragedy. In the years following the tragedy, a slow and meticulous campaign began to rehabilitate Camilla's image. Orchestrated by spin doctors like Mark Bolland, Operation PB was a strategic attempt to introduce her to the public as a permanent fixture in Charles's life. It was a battle for hearts and minds, fought through carefully staged photographs and selective briefings. The goal was to move her from the role of the other woman to that of a supportive partner. This was a calculated play within the ancient machinery of the monarchy, a documentary-like process of reshaping history in real time, one step at a time. The turning point came in January 1999 at the Ritz Hotel in London. In a carefully choreographed moment, Charles and Camilla appeared in public together for the first time. As they stepped out into the glare of hundreds of flashbulbs, the image was beamed across the world. It was the official debut of a couple that had endured decades of scrutiny and scandal. Though the public remained divided, the appearance signaled that Camilla was no longer hiding. She stood beside the future king, her face a mask of composed resilience, stepping out of the shadows and into the long, difficult light of public life. As the new millennium dawned, Camilla began to take her place within the royal fold. She moved into Clarence House, the prince's official residence, and began to accompany him on a limited number of engagements. The transition was slow and deliberate, designed to test the waters of public opinion. She was no longer a scandalous secret, but a woman preparing for a role she had once thought impossible. The ancient halls of the monarchy were beginning to accommodate her presence, and the narrative of the vilified woman was slowly being replaced by a more complex story of endurance, loyalty, and a love that refused to break. By 2002, the atmosphere surrounding Camilla began to shift from open hostility to a cautious, watchful curiosity. As she attended more events alongside Charles, the public began to see the woman behind the headlines, a steadfast companion who brought a sense of stability to the future king. No longer a ghost in the shadows of the palace, she was becoming a fixture of the royal landscape. This period of soft launching her into public life was a delicate operation, requiring immense patience and a thick skin. Behind the closed doors of Clarence's house, a new chapter of the monarchy was being meticulously written, one engagement at a time. The death of the Queen Mother in 2002 marked a somber turning point for the family. While the nation mourned a matriarch, Camilla found herself in a precarious position, navigating the rigid protocols of royal grief. She attended the funeral as a friend of the family, her presence subtle but significant. She stood amongst the mourners, a figure of quiet respect, acknowledging the weight of history and the traditions that governed this ancient institution. Her dignified conduct during this period of national mourning earned her a quiet respect from within the palace walls, signaling a deepening of her integration into the royal fold. In February 2005, the announcement that the world had long anticipated finally arrived. Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles were to be married. The news was met with a mixture of celebration and renewed debate, as the legal and religious implications of a royal divorcee remarrying were scrutinized by the press and the public alike. For Camilla, it was the culmination of decades of devotion and a public acknowledgement of her place by Charles's side. The engagement ring, a family heirloom belonging to the Queen Mother, served as a powerful symbol of her growing acceptance within the heart of the British monarchy. The road to the altar was paved with complex legal maneuvers and constitutional questions. Because both were divorcees, the couple opted for a civil ceremony followed by a religious blessing, a move that required the careful navigation of ancient laws and modern sensibilities. Critics questioned the legality of the union, while supporters argued for the couple's right to happiness. In the quiet corridors of power, lawyers and advisors labored over the details, ensuring that every step taken adhered to the strict traditions of the crown. The atmosphere was tense, a blend of modern legalism and the heavy weight of royal precedent. April 9, 2005, dawned as a day of quiet significance. The civil ceremony at the Windsor Guildhall was a relatively private affair, away from the grand spectacle usually associated with royal weddings. Camilla, dressed in an elegant cream silk chiffon dress and a matching coat, walked beside Charles into a new life. Despite the years of controversy, the moment was defined by a sense of calm and inevitability. The couple emerged not as young lovers in a fairy tale, but as two mature individuals who had weathered a lifetime of storms to reach this point of legal and personal union. Following the civil ceremony, the couple proceeded to St. George's Chapel for a service of prayer and dedication. This was the moment of spiritual recognition, presided over by the Archbishop of Canterbury. As they knelt before the altar, the weight of their new roles began to settle. The Queen and Prince Philip were in attendance, a public sign of the monarch's blessing. The ancient stone walls of the chapel, which had witnessed centuries of royal history, now sheltered a union that had once seemed impossible. The atmosphere was one of solemnity and a hard-won peace, reflecting a love that had endured. Upon her marriage, Camilla became Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Cornwall. The title was a strategic choice, avoiding the emotionally charged title of Princess of Wales out of respect for the late Diana. This transition marked the beginning of her official life as a working royal. At the wedding reception at Windsor Castle, the Queen gave a toast, famously comparing the couple's journey to a difficult horse race that had finally reached the winner's enclosure. It was a rare public moment of royal wit and acceptance, signaling that the Duchess was now firmly part of the inner sanctum. The new Duchess wasted no time in establishing her own royal identity. She began to champion causes that were close to her heart, focusing on areas that had previously been overlooked. From promoting literacy to supporting survivors of domestic violence and osteoporosis, Camilla brought a grounded, no-nonsense approach to her patronages. She was not seeking the spotlight. Rather, she was using her new platform to amplify the voices of the vulnerable. Her work was characterized by a quiet diligence and a genuine interest in the people she met, slowly reshaping her public image from a tabloid fixture to a dedicated public servant. Integration into the family also meant building relationships with Charles's sons, William and Harry. The transition was handled with sensitivity, recognizing the complexity of their shared history. Over time, a rapport was established, built on mutual respect and the shared goal of supporting the Prince of Wales. Camilla became a stabilizing force within the family unit, a warm presence at family gatherings and official functions. The narrative of the wicked stepmother found no footing in reality. Instead, a more nuanced picture emerged of a blended family navigating their unique circumstances with dignity and a sense of shared purpose. As the years passed, the bond between the Queen and the Duchess of Cornwall grew significantly. The monarch came to appreciate Camilla's stoicism, her sense of humor, and her unwavering loyalty to Charles. They shared a love for horses and the countryside, interests that provided common ground outside the pressures of royal duty. The Queen's growing confidence in Camilla was a silent but powerful endorsement. Within the walls of Sandringham and Balmoral, the two women formed a partnership built on a shared understanding of the burdens and blessings of the crown, ensuring the continuity of the monarchy for the next generation. As the new millennium progressed, the public perception of the Duchess of Cornwall began to undergo a slow but perceptible transformation. The vitriol that once dominated headlines started to fade, replaced by a quiet recognition of her commitment to her role. Camilla navigated her public engagements with a blend of humility and grace, often choosing to focus on the work rather than the spectacle. The British public, known for its appreciation of duty and longevity, began to see her not as the woman from the past, but as a dedicated member of the royal family who was here to stay. This shift was not sudden, but a gradual erosion of old prejudices, paved by years of steady, reliable service alongside Prince Charles. Camilla found her voice through her advocacy for causes often overlooked by the mainstream. She became a champion for literacy, recognizing that the ability to read was a fundamental key to opportunity and empowerment. Her work with survivors of domestic abuse was particularly poignant, as she used her platform to break the silence surrounding a taboo subject. These were not easy, glamorous topics. They required a genuine empathy and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. In these rooms, away from the glitz of state banquets, the Duchess showed a different side of herself, one that was deeply compassionate and fiercely protective of the vulnerable, earning her the quiet respect of many who had previously been skeptics. The Diamond Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II in 2012 marked a significant milestone for Camilla. Standing on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, she was no longer an outsider, but a central figure in the royal tableau. The image of her alongside the Queen and the Prince of Wales sent a clear message of unity and continuity. This public display of solidarity was a testament to the years of effort she had invested in building relationships within the family and the institution. The pageantry of the Jubilee, with its flotillas and flypasts, provided a grand backdrop for her increasing integration into the very fabric of the British monarchy, signaling that her place in the succession was now firmly established. Behind the scenes, Prince Charles increasingly relied on Camilla as his strength and stay, a mirror of the support his mother received from Prince Philip. Their partnership was intellectual as well as emotional, with Camilla providing a sounding board for his ideas and a source of comfort during times of political or personal pressure. In the private quarters of Highgrove or Clarence House, they shared a world of quiet reflection, surrounded by books and the natural beauty they both cherished. This deep, enduring bond was the foundation upon which Charles built his vision for the future of the monarchy, knowing that he had a partner who understood the weight of the crown and the sacrifices it demanded. As Queen Elizabeth II reached the twilight of her reign, the preparations for the inevitable transition intensified. The Queen, ever mindful of the future of the institution she had served for decades, began to make her wishes known regarding the role Camilla would play. Within the halls of Windsor and Sandringham, discussions were held with a sense of solemnity and historical purpose. The Duchess was increasingly included in the most sensitive aspects of royal duty, preparing her for the responsibilities that lay ahead. This period was marked by a quiet, focused energy, as the monarchy braced itself for the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter under Charles and Camilla. The Queen's Platinum Jubilee in 2022 brought a momentous announcement that would forever change Camilla's destiny. In a statement released to the nation, the Queen expressed her sincere wish that when the time came, Camilla would be known as Queen Consort. This formal endorsement was the final, definitive step in Camilla's journey from a controversial figure to the future queen. The announcement was met with a mixture of surprise and respect, as it represented the ultimate seal of approval from the most respected monarch in British history. For Camilla, it was a profound validation of her years of service and her unwavering loyalty to the prince and the crown. In September 2022, the world stood still as the news of Queen Elizabeth II's passing at Balmoral was announced. For Camilla, this was a moment of profound personal loss and immense public transition. As she stood by the side of the new king, Charles III, the weight of their new roles began to settle upon them. The mourning period was a grueling marathon of tradition and duty, played out on the global stage. Camilla moved through the somber ceremonies with a quiet dignity, providing a steadying presence for her husband as he navigated his first days as sovereign. The ancient rituals of the British monarchy were now their daily reality. The proclamation of King Charles III at St. James's Palace was a scene of ancient splendor and modern significance. As the Garter King of Arms read the proclamation from the balcony, Camilla stood as a witness to history. The ceremony, steeped in centuries of tradition, served as the formal beginning of the Carolean era. The atmosphere was one of intense gravity, with the eyes of the world watching the smooth transfer of power. For Camilla, the transition from Duchess to Queen Consort was now official, a title that carried with it the expectations of a nation and the responsibility of supporting the king in his new, daunting tasks. The first days of the new reign were a whirlwind of official duties, from meeting world leaders to attending memorial services across the United Kingdom. As Queen Consort, Camilla's schedule was more demanding than ever before. She stepped into her new role with a quiet efficiency, understanding that her primary duty was to provide a stable foundation for the king's reign. The transition was seamless, yet the burden was visible in the long hours and the constant public scrutiny. Behind the palace walls, she continued to be Charles's closest confidant, helping him manage the immense pressure of his new responsibilities while maintaining her own commitment to her charitable causes. As the preparations for the coronation began, the focus shifted to the ancient rituals that would formalize the new reign. The planning for such an event was a monumental task, requiring a delicate balance between tradition and the need for a modern monarchy. Camilla worked closely with the Earl Marshal and the King to ensure that the ceremony reflected their vision for a more inclusive and streamlined institution. The weight of history was ever present as they studied the precedents set by previous coronations. For Camilla, this was the final step in a journey she could never have imagined, preparing to be crowned alongside the man she had loved for decades. Inside the hallowed halls of Westminster Abbey, the air was thick with the scent of ancient stone and beeswax as the final preparations for the coronation intensified. Shadows stretched long across the Cosmati pavement, where every geometric tile whispered secrets of medieval kings. Camilla walked the nave in silence, observing the scaffolding that supported the weight of global expectation. This was no longer just a rehearsal. It was the conjuring of a 1,000-year-old ghost. The Earl Marshal pointed to the spot where the chair of St. Edward would rest, a weathered oak throne that had seen the rise and fall of dynasties, now waiting for its next occupant. In the high-security vaults of the Tower of London, the regalia was prepared for its journey to the Abbey. Queen Mary's crown, chosen by Camilla for her own crowning, sat under the watchful eyes of the crown jeweler. It was a choice of profound significance, modified with the Cullinan diamonds to honor the late Queen Elizabeth II. The stones caught the dim light, refracting a cold, brilliant fire that spoke of endurance and legacy. Camilla understood that wearing this crown was not an act of vanity, but a submission to the institution, a public binding of her life to the service of the realm. The sacredness of the upcoming ceremony was distilled into a single vessel, the ampulla. Containing the chrism oil pressed from olives grown on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, it represented the spiritual core of the coronation. For Camilla, this element was the most daunting. The anointing was a private moment between the sovereign and the divine, a ritual that had remained largely unchanged since the era of the Plantagenets. As she studied the liturgy, she felt the gravity of the transition from a private citizen to a consecrated queen consort, a role defined by both ancient mysticism and modern duty. Late into the evening, King Charles and Camilla stood together in the empty abbey, the silence broken only by the distant chime of Big Ben. They moved through the choreography of the ceremony, their footsteps echoing in the vast space. It was a moment of rare intimacy amidst the grand machinery of state. Charles held her hand, a gesture of mutual support that had sustained them through decades of scrutiny. In this quiet rehearsal, the weight of the crown felt less like a burden and more like a shared destiny, a final culmination of a long and often turbulent journey toward the throne. May 6, 2023, dawned gray and misty, a classic London morning that lent an air of timelessness to the proceedings. As the Gold State coach emerged from Buckingham Palace, the rhythmic clatter of hooves on the Mall signaled the start of the King's procession. Inside the ornate, swaying carriage, Camilla sat beside Charles, her face a mask of composed dignity. Thousands lined the streets, a sea of umbrellas and flags visible through the rain-streaked glass. The coach, a masterpiece of 18th-century craftsmanship, felt like a gilded capsule traveling through time, carrying the monarchy from its storied past into an uncertain but hopeful future. The interior of the Abbey was a tapestry of modern Britain and global diplomacy. Leaders from every corner of the earth sat alongside community heroes and representatives of various faiths, creating a vista that would have been unimaginable at the last coronation in 1953. Camilla watched the congregation as she processed toward the altar, her ivory silk gown embroidered with wildflowers and the names of her children and grandchildren, a subtle, personal touch hidden within the grand formality. The atmosphere was one of hushed reverence, a collective holding of breath as the ancient machinery of the state began to turn in earnest. The recognition and the oath were the first hurdles of the rite. King Charles stood before the people, his voice steady as he promised to govern with mercy and justice. Camilla stood by his side, her presence a silent testament to the partnership that had become the bedrock of his reign. The Archbishop of Canterbury's words rang out, ancient and rhythmic, binding the monarch to the laws of the land and the church. Every gesture was deliberate, every response a link in a chain stretching back to 1066. The weight of history was no longer an abstract concept. It was a physical presence in the room. Then came the most sacred moment: the anointing. Behind a three-sided screen, away from the cameras and the eyes of the world, Charles was consecrated with the holy oil. Shortly after, it was Camilla's turn. The Archbishop poured the oil onto her forehead, a sign of her role as Queen Consort. It was a moment of profound transformation. In the stillness behind the screen, the noise of the world faded, leaving only the weight of the task ahead. She was no longer just the woman who had stood by the king. She was now the queen, recognized and sanctified by the ancient rites of the realm. The climax of the ceremony arrived with the crowning. As the Archbishop lowered St. Edward's crown onto the king's head, a shout of "God save the King" erupted, echoed by the sounding of trumpets and the firing of guns at the tower. Moments later, Queen Mary's crown was placed upon Camilla's head. She felt the cool weight of the diamonds and the snug fit of the frame. It was the final seal on her journey, from a figure of public controversy to the consecrated queen. As she looked toward Charles, the crowns they both wore symbolized a shared commitment to a life of service and the endurance of the crown. The ceremony concluded, and the newly crowned king and queen made their way back to Buckingham Palace. The highlight for the public was the appearance on the balcony. As the red arrows soared overhead, trailing plumes of red, white, and blue, Charles and Camilla stood before the cheering crowds. The balcony, a stage for so many of the monarchy's most iconic moments, now hosted a new chapter. Camilla looked out at the sea of faces, knowing that while the crowns would be put away, the work of the modern monarchy was only just beginning. The transition was complete. The era of King Charles III and Queen Camilla had truly dawned. The morning after the coronation, the weight of the crown lingered in the stillness of the palace. Queen Camilla stood by the tall, arched windows of her private study, watching the gray London mist cling to the iron gates. The transition from consort to queen was more than a change in title. It was a profound shift in the architecture of her daily life. The roar of the crowds had been replaced by the quiet scratching of a fountain pen on heavy vellum. For Camilla, this was the moment of quiet reckoning, where the historical gravity of her role finally settled upon her shoulders amidst the shadows of the past. In the weeks that followed, the Queen's administrative machinery began to turn with renewed purpose. Camilla met with her private secretaries to recalibrate her portfolio of patronages. She sought to balance the ancient expectations of the crown with the urgent needs of contemporary society. The stacks of correspondence on her desk were a testament to the myriad lives she now touched. This was not merely about symbolic appearances. It was about the meticulous, often invisible work of steadying the monarchy during a period of monumental change. Every signature was a thread woven into the fabric of a new Elizabethan to Carolean transition. Diplomacy became a central pillar of her new routine. Hosting foreign dignitaries required a delicate touch, a blend of warmth and the impenetrable dignity of the British state. In the drawing rooms of the palace, Camilla navigated the complexities of international relations over tea and quiet conversation. She understood that she was now a primary face of the nation's soft power. These encounters were shadowed by centuries of precedent, yet she brought a pragmatic, modern sensibility to each handshake. The world was watching to see how this modern queen would represent the United Kingdom on the global stage. Despite her elevated status, Camilla remained committed to the grassroots causes that had defined her public life for decades. She visited a literacy center in a quiet corner of London, where the smell of old books and the enthusiasm of young readers provided a grounded contrast to palace life. Here, the queen was in her element, listening more than she spoke. She viewed literacy not just as an educational goal, but as a tool for social mobility and personal freedom. Even in this humble setting, the presence of the queen consort brought a sense of historical continuity and royal validation to the struggle for education. The queen often found herself drawn to the royal archives, seeking the counsel of history. Surrounded by the journals and letters of her predecessors, she studied the lives of the queen consorts who had navigated their own eras of crisis and reform. From Queen Charlotte to Queen Mary, she looked for the patterns of duty and the personal sacrifices required to sustain the institution. In the dim light of the archives, the parchment texture of the past felt tangible. She realized that while the technology and social norms had changed, the core challenge of the consort remained: to be the steady anchor beside the throne. The public's perception of Camilla continued to evolve in the digital age. On the rain-slicked streets of London, digital billboards and morning newspapers carried her image, a constant presence in the daily lives of the citizens. There was a growing respect for her stoicism and her work ethic. The controversy of decades past had largely faded, replaced by an acknowledgement of her loyalty to the king and her service to the crown. The modern monarchy was being lived out in the tension between ancient tradition and the relentless glare of the 24-hour news cycle, a reality Camilla navigated with quiet, determined grace. Within the private quarters, the partnership between King Charles and Queen Camilla remained the monarchy's strongest asset. They spent their evenings discussing the future of the Commonwealth, often over maps and briefing papers spread across a low table. Theirs was a collaboration born of long years and shared trials. Camilla acted as a sounding board, a confidant, and a source of blunt honesty that the king could find nowhere else. In the flickering firelight, the two figures represented the bridge between the old world and the new. Two individuals bound by a shared sense of destiny and a heavy mantle of service. One of the most challenging aspects of her role was her continued advocacy for survivors of domestic violence. This was a cause she had championed long before she was queen, and she refused to let the formality of her new position distance her from the raw reality of the issue. Speaking at a high-level forum, she used the power of her platform to shine a light into the darkest corners of society. Her voice, steady and grave, resonated through the hall. She was no longer just a figurehead. She was an advocate using the ancient prestige of the crown to demand modern change and justice. As the date for the first state banquet of the new reign approached, the palace buzzed with a different kind of energy. Every detail, from the arrangement of the gold plate to the floral displays, was overseen with meticulous care. Camilla sought to honor the traditions of her mother-in-law while introducing a more streamlined, contemporary aesthetic. The banquet was to be a masterclass in royal theater, a display of continuity and stability for the nation's allies. In the grand ballroom, beneath the weight of history and the sparkle of diamonds, the new queen prepared to lead the monarchy into a display of timeless, yet evolving, majesty. As the sun set over the Thames, casting long, amber shadows across the palace facade, Queen Camilla looked out from the balcony once more. The city below was a hive of modern activity, yet within these walls, time seemed to move differently. The first chapter of her reign was coming to a close, but the story of the modern monarchy was an ongoing narrative of adaptation. She knew the challenges ahead were significant, from the changing nature of the Commonwealth to the internal pressures of a family in the public eye. Yet she stood firm, a quiet sentinel for a throne that remained the heart of British identity. Deep within the bowels of Windsor Castle, the royal archives whisper secrets of 1,000 years. Queen Camilla traverses these silent corridors, her footsteps muffled by heavy crimson carpets. Here, the weight of the past is tangible, preserved in ink and parchment. She is not merely a figurehead, but a custodian of a legacy that spans centuries of triumph and turmoil. As she opens a weathered ledger from the Victorian era, she realizes that every decision made within these walls ripples through time. The mystery of the monarchy lies in its ability to endure, while the world outside shifts like desert sands, and she must now navigate this ancient maze with a steady hand. In the solitude of the private chapel, the air is thick with the scent of beeswax and old stone. Camilla stands before the altar, the flickering candlelight casting long, dancing shadows that seem to animate the carved saints on the walls. The silence is profound, a stark contrast to the clamor of modern headlines. She reflects on the silent pact between the sovereign and the people, a bond forged in tradition and tested by the scrutiny of the digital age. The ancient British royal mystery is not found in the crown jewels, but in the quiet moments of prayer and the heavy burden of duty that rests upon her shoulders in the dead of night. The council chamber is filled with the low murmur of advisors and the rustle of briefing papers. Camilla sits beside King Charles, her presence a calming influence in a room charged with the tension of global politics. The Commonwealth is evolving, and the monarchy must find its place within a network of independent nations that still look to the throne for continuity. She listens intently, her gaze sharp and analytical. The challenge is to maintain the mystery and dignity of the crown while engaging with a world that demands transparency. It is a delicate balancing act, played out across a table that has seen the signatures of kings and queens for generations. Outside the palace gates, the modern world presses in. Protesters and paparazzi create a cacophony of flashes and shouts, a stark reminder of the internal and external pressures facing the family. From behind the thick glass of a state limousine, Camilla watches the blur of the city. The divide between the private life of the royals and their public persona has never been thinner. She understands that the survival of the institution depends on its ability to absorb these shocks without breaking. Her face remains a mask of composure, a shield against the intrusive glare of the cameras, embodying the stoicism required of a modern queen consort. The late-night meetings in the king's study are where the real work happens. Surrounded by portraits of ancestors who faced their own crises, Camilla and Charles discuss the future of a family often at odds with itself. The shadows in the room seem to hold the ghosts of past monarchs, watching as the modern couple navigates the complexities of family loyalty versus national duty. Camilla acts as the bridge, the one who can speak truth to power when the weight of the crown becomes too heavy for the king alone. Their partnership is the foundation upon which the modern era of the monarchy is being built, brick by painful brick. Camilla's dedication to literacy takes her to the dusty corners of ancient libraries and the vibrant halls of modern schools. In a historic library in Edinburgh, she handles a first edition with the same reverence she shows for the crown. For her, books are the vessels of human history and the key to a better future. The documentary tone of her public service is one of quiet competence, far removed from the glitz and glamour often associated with royalty. She sees her role as a bridge between the ancient wisdom stored in these volumes and the voices of the next generation who will eventually inherit the kingdom. The stroke of a pen can change the course of history, and Camilla is often the one preparing the way. Late into the evening, she reviews correspondence from across the Commonwealth, her desk illuminated by a single silver lamp. The parchment texture of the letters under her fingers reminds her of the permanence of her actions. Each word she suggests, each letter she drafts, is a thread in the tapestry of the modern reign. She works in the silence of the night, a quiet sentinel for the throne. ensuring that the transition into the new era is as seamless as possible despite the fractures within the family and the state. Fragile connections are the reality of a family in the global spotlight. Camilla looks at a series of framed photographs on a console table, reflecting on the distance between members of the house. The modern monarchy is a fragmented mirror, reflecting both the ideals of the past and the messy realities of the present. She knows that healing the rifts is a task that requires patience and discretion, virtues she has honed over decades of public scrutiny. The mystery of the family is not in what is said, but in the silences and the shadows that lie between them, waiting for a moment of reconciliation that may never come. The stone of Scone, the ancient coronation chair, and the echoes of Westminster Abbey serve as reminders of the permanence of the institution. Camilla visits the Abbey during a quiet hour, the sunlight through the stained glass painting patterns on the cold stone floor. Here, she is just another figure in a long line of consorts who have supported the sovereign through the ages. The resilience of the throne is tied to these ancient relics, yet its future depends on the living breath of those who serve it. She feels the weight of the crown even when she is not wearing it, a constant presence that defines her every move. As she prepares for the next chapter, Camilla looks toward the young princes and princesses, the future of the Windsor line. She sees in them the same spark of duty, tempered by the challenges of a world their ancestors could never have imagined. Her role is to guide them, to pass on the wisdom of the past, while encouraging them to embrace the future. The story of the modern monarchy is far from over. It is an ongoing narrative of adaptation and endurance. Standing in the doorway of the nursery, she watches the next generation, a silent guardian of the flame that has burned for over a millennium. The weight of the crown is never truly felt until it rests upon the brow. Yet for Camilla, the burden was understood long before the coronation. In the quiet chambers of Clarence House, she contemplates the heavy gold of St. Edward's crown, not as a prize, but as a commitment. It represents a millennium of survival, a lineage of women who stood behind the throne and those who eventually sat upon it. She reflects on the gravity of her position, acknowledging that the glitter of the jewels is secondary to the shadow they cast across history. Her journey to this moment was paved with both silence and resilience, preparing her for a destiny that once seemed impossible. Camilla retreats to the royal archives, a sanctuary of ink and vellum where the voices of the past whisper through handwritten letters. She traces the elegant script of Queen Mary and the private musings of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, seeking a blueprint for her own service. These documents are more than relics. They are a map of royal endurance. In this dusty silence, she finds a profound connection to the consorts who navigated their own eras of upheaval. The parchment under her fingertips serves as a reminder that while the world changes, the core requirements of the crown, discretion, loyalty, and a steady hand, remain immutable across the centuries. The transition from a private citizen to the queen consort was not merely a change in title, but a total transformation of her public identity. For decades, the media lens was a harsh judge, yet Camilla met the scrutiny with a quiet, unflinching dignity. She understood that time is the ultimate arbiter of truth. As she looks out at the modern landscape, she sees how the narrative has shifted from one of controversy to one of stability. Her presence has become a calming force within the palace walls, a bridge between the tumultuous late 20th century and the uncertain dawn of the 21st. She is no longer the outsider, but the pillar. Behind the closed doors of the staterooms, the partnership between the king and the queen consort is one of shared labor. They sit across from one another at a massive oak desk surrounded by the red boxes that dictate the daily rhythm of the realm. This is the private engine of the monarchy, where decisions are weighed and speeches are refined. Camilla provides a sounding board for Charles, her pragmatic nature balancing his visionary drive. Their relationship, forged in the fires of public debate, has evolved into a formidable alliance of duty. Together, they navigate the complexities of governance, two figures bound by a shared oath and a lifetime of mutual understanding. The modern monarchy faces a world of rapid social and environmental change, and Camilla is at the forefront of this adaptation. She recognizes that the crown must reflect the concerns of the people to remain relevant. From her work with survivors of domestic abuse to her advocacy for literacy, she has carved out a role that is both traditional and contemporary. She views the monarchy not as a static monument, but as a living entity that must grow. In her meetings with global leaders and grassroots activists, she represents a monarchy that listens, a queen who understands that her influence is best used to amplify the voices of the marginalized and the vulnerable. Even amidst the grandeur of London, Camilla finds her true strength in the soil of the English countryside. At Highgrove, away from the flashbulbs and the protocols, she connects with the natural world that has long been her solace. Walking through the mist-shrouded gardens at dawn, she finds a clarity that the city cannot provide. This connection to the land is a trait she shares with generations of royals before her, a grounding force that keeps her centered. The cycles of the seasons serve as a metaphor for the monarchy itself, enduring, changing, yet fundamentally rooted in the very earth of the United Kingdom. Here, she is simply a steward of the landscape. The ritual of a state banquet is a masterclass in tradition, and Camilla prepares for it with the precision of a seasoned diplomat. As she is helped into her heavy velvet robes and the family orders are pinned to her chest, she becomes a living symbol of the state. The jewelry she wears is more than just ornament. Each piece tells a story of alliances, marriages, and the passage of power. The air is thick with the scent of beeswax and old roses. In this moment of high ceremony, she understands that she is performing a role that is larger than herself, acting as the face of a nation's continuity and its storied past. Walking through the long, portrait-lined corridors of Buckingham Palace, Camilla is never truly alone. The eyes of former kings and queens follow her from their gilded frames, a silent jury of the ancestors. She feels the weight of their gaze, a constant reminder of the standards she must uphold. These hallways are the arteries of the British state, having witnessed centuries of intrigue, grief, and triumph. Camilla moves through them with a steady pace, her shadow lengthening against the ornate wallpaper. She is the latest in a long line of figures to walk these floors, a temporary guardian of a flame that began long before her and will continue long after. The life of a working royal is often misunderstood as one of leisure. But for Camilla, it is a relentless cycle of duty and correspondence. At her desk, she pores over briefing papers and personal letters from the public, responding with a genuine warmth that has become her hallmark. Each signature is a pact with the people she serves. She works late into the night, the only light coming from a single green-shaded lamp. This quiet, unseen labor is the bedrock of her queenship. She knows that the strength of the monarchy lies not in its public spectacles, but in the small, consistent acts of service that bind the sovereign to the citizen. Standing on the threshold of a new era, Camilla looks out from the palace window towards the London skyline. The ancient stones of the abbey stand in contrast to the glass towers of the financial district, a perfect reflection of the monarchy she helps lead. It is a balancing act between the ancient and the modern, the sacred and the secular. As she prepares for the challenges of the coming years, she does so with a sense of peace. She has navigated the storms of the past and emerged as a vital component of the present. The story of Camilla is one of endurance, proving that even in a world of constant change, some things remain eternal. Camilla's days are now defined by a relentless schedule of service, a rhythm that dictates the pulse of the new reign. From early morning briefings to late-night correspondence, her role as Queen Consort is far from honorary. It is a labor of loyalty. She moves through the corridors of Buckingham Palace, not as a visitor, but as a pillar of its daily operations. Each document she reviews and every meeting she attends serves the singular purpose of stabilizing the crown during a period of profound transition. Her presence is a constant, steadying force in an ever-shifting political and social landscape. Beside King Charles, Camilla acts as both confidant and counselor, a partnership forged in the fires of shared history. In the quiet sanctum of the king's private study, they discuss the future of the Commonwealth and the burdens of their shared office. There is a silent language between them, born of decades of friendship and the endurance of their bond. As the king grapples with the immense responsibilities of his role, Camilla provides the emotional grounding necessary to navigate the complexities of modern leadership. Together, they represent a unified front, blending personal devotion with public duty in a way that anchors the monarchy. Camilla's personal passions have become public missions, particularly her advocacy for literacy and her support for survivors of domestic violence. These are not merely charitable causes, but deeply held convictions that she champions with a quiet intensity. She meets with survivors in the shadows of high-walled institutions, offering a listening ear and the weight of her influence to those who have long been silenced. In these moments, the Queen Consort transcends the pageantry of her title, focusing instead on the raw human experience. Her commitment to these issues has brought a renewed sense of purpose to the royal house. Behind the closed doors of the palace, the strategic evolution of the monarchy continues under Camilla's watchful gaze. She works closely with advisors to ensure the institution remains relevant without sacrificing its historical identity. This delicate balance requires a keen understanding of public sentiment and an unwavering respect for tradition. As the world becomes increasingly digitized and fast-paced, Camilla advocates for a monarchy that listens as much as it speaks. Her influence is felt in the subtle shifts of royal protocol and the modernization of palace communications, ensuring that the ancient institution speaks to the contemporary citizen. Walking through the long galleries of Windsor Castle, Camilla often pauses before the portraits of the queens who preceded her. She sees in their eyes the same burdens she now carries, the loneliness of the position and the scrutiny of the public eye. These historical figures are her silent mentors, their legacies woven into the very fabric of the stones that surround her. She understands that she is but one link in a chain that stretches back 1,000 years. This historical perspective provides her with the patience needed to endure the challenges of the present, knowing that time eventually softens all edges. On the international stage, Camilla's role as Queen Consort takes on a diplomatic dimension. During state banquets and official visits, she navigates the complexities of global politics with a refined grace. She represents the United Kingdom not just with her presence, but with her ability to foster connections across cultural divides. Whether hosting world leaders at the palace or visiting remote communities abroad, she projects an image of stability and continuity. Her interactions are marked by a serious-minded approach to the challenges facing the global community, ensuring that the voice of the monarchy remains a respected one in the councils of the world. Away from the clamor of London, Camilla finds solace in the gardens of her private estates. The changing seasons at Highgrove serve as a reminder of the natural cycles of life and the inevitability of change. Here, she is not the queen consort, but a woman of the earth, finding peace in the simple act of gardening. This connection to the land provides a necessary counterpoint to the artifice of palace life. In the quiet of the countryside, she reflects on her journey and the resilience required to thrive. The landscape, much like the monarchy itself, is a blend of careful cultivation and wild, enduring spirit. The transition from the most criticized woman in Britain to the queen consort has been a decades-long transformation. Camilla has learned to navigate the turbulent waters of public perception with a stoic resolve. She does not seek to rewrite the past, but rather to build a future based on consistent service and genuine engagement. The scars of previous years have shaped her into a leader who is both empathetic and resilient. As the public begins to see the woman behind the headlines, she remains focused on the work at hand, proving that character is revealed not in words, but in the steady accumulation of deeds. In the moments before a major state opening, the ritual of preparation takes place in the hushed chambers of the palace. Camilla is adorned with jewels that have seen centuries of history, each piece a symbol of the continuity of the British state. The weight of the diamonds and the silk of her gown are reminders of the office she holds. As she gazes into the mirror, she sees not just herself, but the embodiment of a tradition that has survived wars, scandals, and societal shifts. This quiet preparation is a sacred act, a transition from the private individual to the public symbol of the queen consort. As the doors of the palace swing open to the waiting world, Camilla steps forward with a quiet resolve. She has become the bridge between the legacy of the late queen and the new vision of King Charles. Her journey is a testament to the power of endurance and the quiet strength of a woman who stayed the course. In the eyes of the nation, she has earned her place at the center of the monarchy. The future remains uncertain, but Camilla stands ready to face it, a steady hand and a calm heart, guiding the crown through the challenges of the 21st century. The weight of the crown is not just in its cold jewels, but in the centuries of expectation it carries. As Camilla walks through the hallowed corridors of Windsor, she passes the portraits of those who came before. Each face tells a story of duty, sacrifice, and the relentless scrutiny of the public eye. She is no longer just a figure in the background. She is the living embodiment of the institution's survival. The shadows of the past dance on the stone walls, but her gaze remains fixed forward. She understands that to lead is to serve, and to serve is to endure the silence of history. In the quiet of the palace library, Camilla continues her work for the causes she holds dear. Her commitment to literacy and the support of victims of domestic abuse has become a hallmark of her modern reign. She does not seek the spotlight, yet her influence is felt in the lives of those she champions. The scrolls and leather-bound volumes surrounding her serve as a reminder that the written word is more powerful than any decree. In this serious space, she crafts a legacy of empathy and action, bridging the gap between royal tradition and the harsh realities of the modern world. Beside King Charles, Camilla remains a steadying force. Their partnership, forged in the fires of public controversy and private devotion, has become the bedrock of the new reign. In the grand state rooms, they stand together, a united front against the challenges of a changing world. It is a partnership of equals, where whispers of counsel are exchanged in the margins of ceremony. She provides the calm to his storm, the quiet resolve to his public passion. Together, they navigate the complexities of their roles, knowing that the crown is a shared burden and a shared promise to the nation. The public gaze remains ever present, a constant tide that has shifted from skepticism to a measured respect. Camilla faces the crowds not with the flash of a celebrity, but with the dignity of a stateswoman. She has learned the art of the subtle gesture, a nod, a smile, a moment of genuine listening. These small acts of connection have slowly dismantled the walls of prejudice. In the eyes of the nation, she has become a familiar presence, a grandmotherly figure who carries the mantle of royalty with an unassuming grace. The mystery of the monarchy remains, but she has humanized its face. Reflecting on the legacy of the late Queen Elizabeth II, Camilla acknowledges the immense shoes she must fill. She does not attempt to replicate the style of her predecessor, but rather to honor the spirit of service that defined the Queen's long life. In the quiet chapels and memorial spaces of the royal estates, Camilla finds moments of contemplation. The transition of power is a delicate dance between honoring the past and embracing the future. She carries the late Queen's lessons in her heart, using them as a compass to navigate the shifting sands of the 21st century monarchy. The challenges of the modern era are unlike any the monarchy has faced before. Digital storms and global crises demand a new kind of resilience. Camilla remains unruffled by the noise of the 24-hour news cycle. She has survived decades of media pressure, and that experience has tempered her into a woman of steel. Behind the palace walls, she works tirelessly, ensuring that the institution remains relevant without losing its essential character. She is the anchor in a world of constant change, providing a sense of continuity that is vital to the crown's survival in a cynical age. Diplomacy is a quiet game played in the drawing rooms of the world. Camilla has become an adept player, hosting world leaders with a blend of warmth and traditional protocol. She understands the power of soft diplomacy, the ability to build bridges through conversation and culture. Each state dinner and official reception is a choreographed performance where she represents the crown with poise. The world sees a queen consort who is comfortable in her skin and confident in her role. She has become an essential asset to the king, helping to maintain the UK's influence on the global stage through quiet strength. As the historical record is written, Camilla's name will be etched alongside the greats of British history. The narrative of her life has been one of redemption and transformation. She has moved from the role of the outsider to the very heart of the establishment. This transition is documented in the archives, where her contributions are being preserved for future generations. She is mindful of how history will judge her, not as a romantic figure, but as a woman who did her duty when the call came. Her story is a testament to the fact that one's past does not define their future. In a rare moment of private reflection, Camilla looks at the crown not as a symbol of power, but as a symbol of responsibility. It sits on a velvet cushion, a physical manifestation of the vow she has taken. She recalls the long road that led her to this point, the moments of doubt, the public outcries, and the eventual acceptance. She does not wear the crown for herself, but for the legacy of her husband and the stability of the realm. As she prepares for the next chapter of her reign, she does so with a heart that has been tempered by experience and a spirit that is ready for whatever comes. The sun sets over the Thames, casting a golden yet somber light over the capital. Camilla stands at the window of the palace, a silhouette against the fading day. Her journey from the fringes to the heart of the monarchy is complete. She has weathered the storms of scandal and the trials of public opinion, emerging as a figure of stability and grace. The story of the British monarchy is one of constant evolution, and she is its newest, most resilient chapter. With a steady hand and a calm heart, she guides the crown into the future, a queen consort who has truly earned her place in time.